This video is all about the number one most important, most critical missing piece that's holding so many people back, including you most likely, from their next level success, from really living the kind of success they know they're capable of. My name is Brent Phillips. I am a MIT-trained software engineer, turned video game entrepreneur, turned energy healer and spiritual teacher, turned executive coach. And this is video number 1 of 8 in our series on executive presence. And I created this series because I've seen so many people who are smart, who are talented, who are educated, who are ambitious, who are creative, who are driven, they're organized, they're willing to do the work, they're willing to make the sacrifices, but things never quite click. They get passed over for promotion, or they can't land that big investor, or things are going great and the market turns against them, or something goes wrong in their life. And so I want you to know that all those things we just mentioned, the intelligence, the drive, the education, the passion, the creativity, all those things are necessary to have really big, high-level success. In other words, what I call, who wants to be a billionaire? And what my late mentor Carl used to say is this: if you try to make a living from your mind through action, through logic, reason, being clever, being smart, working hard, that sort of thing, you will likely succeed in making a living. But without presence, what we'll call executive presence, you're never going to make a killing. And so why is this important? Why does it matter? Well, I want you to stop for a second and think about all the different terms we have. I'm using the term executive presence in this series, but there's all sorts of words that mean pretty much the same thing. We talk about being in the zone. We talk about being in a flow state, dropping in, being in your body, releasing attachment, getting out of your head, getting emotionally connected, getting grounded. All these things mean about the same thing. The opposite would be living in the mind, being in your head, being attached to result, being driven as a victim to circumstance rather than powerfully creating what you want. So you might be thinking, okay, Brett, that sounds great. But how important is this presence thing really? I mean, do I really need it to get the job, to get the promotion, to be the CEO or CTO or whatever your goal is, to find the right investor for your company, to bring your company public at the right time, make millions, perhaps billions of dollars? Well, here's why. Simple logic. If we look at all the things that have to go into an accomplishment like that, there's a long list, right? Let's say, just for sake of example, that you're giving a presentation to a group of investors. And if they say, yes, this could be the next step on launching your dream, moving your company forward. And of course, this could also be a job interview. It could be a date. It could be a performance. Could be anything. But we'll just say, for sake of example, you're pitching some investors. I want you to stop for a second and think, how many little factors totally beyond your control have to go right for you to achieve success? The answer is a lot. There's so many things that you can't control. For example, maybe you get a horrible stomach flu. That's going to blow the meeting, right? You may not get another chance. Maybe one of the investors has a horrible flu, or maybe one of them is injured in a car accident, or maybe they just had a death in the family, or maybe they've just had someone they know suffer from a drug overdose, or maybe there was a stock market collapse. Maybe there's some huge event in the news. A war breaks out, a natural disaster. The point is, any one of these things could derail that meeting. And in order for you to have a good presentation, to be heard by the investors, to get a positive response, to get the funding, to make your company hugely successful, to go to that next level, requires all sorts of little things to go right. And so probably the best synonym for executive presence is luck. I know that sounds a little crazy, but hear me out. Without that, without creating your own luck, you're going to have a heck of a time moving forward. Let me point out, what most of us think of as luck is actually something we have some indirect influence over. It's not just a roll of the dice. And so, as an example, one of the men who really embodied this executive presence. You probably haven't heard of him, but he was my late mentor. His name was Carl Wolf. And he had that incredible grounding, that ability to be present in the moment. He was always in the flow, always in the field, always connected. And what happened was all sorts of little things tended to break his way almost every single day. It was really crazy to see up close and firsthand. As a simple example, I remember the first time I traveled with him. We were going from Los Angeles to Boston for a 4-day retreat, and Carl was leading the retreat. And because we both lived close to each other, we booked the same flight, and we shared a ride to the airport. And so we got to the airport, and if you've ever been to LAX, you know that if you go there at the wrong time, the security lines are absolutely insane, right? So we're there about 2 hours before the flight, and it's the longest security line I've ever seen. It goes for like a block. It's the huge long line, right? And we stood in the back, and I started going right down the rabbit hole. Oh my God, we're going to miss the flight. We're going to miss the first day. I've wasted all this money, all this negative thinking. And Carl just said, Brent, relax. We haven't missed the flight yet. Let's see what happens. And it was the craziest thing. Not more than 3 minutes later, this lady in a TSA uniform walked right up to Carl, looked him right in the eye, and said, excuse me, sir, if you'd like, I'm happy to take you and your party through the VIP check-in where there's no line. And Carl was like, oh, thank you very much. And so we walked over to the VIP check-in. 3 minutes later, we were through security, and we're walking to the gate. And I'm like, hey, Carl, how did you know her? Because I figured he had to know her. I thought maybe she was a friend of the family, one of his former clients or something like that. And he laughed. He said, no, Brent, I've never seen her before in my life, but things like that happen to me all the time. And so that's what it comes down to. We can drive our own luck through this process of cultivating executive presence, gravitas, charisma, the flow, being in the zone. All these mean the same thing. And if you look at all the things that have to happen for a company to become hugely successful, there's all sorts of little things that have to break your way, all sorts of them. And you can actually influence those things by cultivating presence. So here's what it comes down to. With things like your career, getting investments for your company, selling a company, taking it public, anything to do with the markets, the weather, the economy, global events. We all know you can't time the market. No one knows for sure when things are going up or going down. And if they do, they're not telling. And so those that try to time the market inevitably fail. What I'm saying is there is a way to achieve success, but it's not through mental manipulation. It's through presence, being in your body, being in the flow state. That's how we indirectly increase our luck. That's why I told you the story of going to the airport with Carl. Little things tended to break his way all the time. Anybody that's done any kind of practices, like a lot of my students with using energy, the power of the mind, cultivating a theta brainwave, knows that one of the fun things to play with is parking spaces. As you get more present, it gets very easy to create simple things, like there's always a parking space when you need it. That expands to things like, can you find the right investor? Are you at the right place at the right time with the right thing? Are you a day late? Are you a dollar short? And of course, we're focused here mainly on your career, bringing a company up, getting an investor, growing it, selling it, taking it public, because that's where the real money is. But this applies to everything. If you're a musician, what you do and how talented you are is much less important as being in the right place at the right time with the right thing. There's all sorts of incredibly talented musicians who you've never heard of, who never got a break. Why? They lack this presence, this gravitas, this charisma. Same thing with actors, with writers, with authors. There's lots of people that work hard, that are smart, that are talented, but things never quite click. And again, there's a million reasons why that can happen. And so I will encourage you to have an open mind. Try this and see what happens. Because I never would have believed in this decades ago. no matter who was telling me, it sounds totally crazy. But let me give you an example of someone who had this at a pretty good level. His name is Phil Jackson. If you're a basketball fan, he played a little bit in the NBA in the 70s, and he went on to become a head coach, first for the Chicago Bulls, then the Los Angeles Lakers. And so, long story short, Phil Jackson coached 17 seasons in the NBA. 13 of those 17 seasons, his team went to the finals. 10 of those seasons, he won the championship. This is what happens when you mix presence with the talent, the ambition, the drive, etc. Magic happens. This is how you make a killing rather than just making a living. And if we look at some of the people that have been enormously successful, what you'll find is they were open to outcome rather than attached to result. In other words, they weren't insisting that everything go their way all the time. There was a certain trust in the flow of life. And when you have that, you tend to achieve high-level success. It's pretty amazing. Another good example with Carl was that in the 10 years or so I knew him before he passed away, he had moved 3 times. And he always seemed to be selling or buying property at exactly the right time. And it can't be manipulated. Again, you can't time the market. The best metaphor I can give you is you have to feel into it. It's kind of like rollerblading or riding a bike. You can't balance your body while you're skating or riding a bike or a motorcycle from the mind. You can't think, well, gee, I have to turn left at 17.4 degrees and angle my body here. No, it doesn't work that way. The way you rollerblade or ice skate or ride a motorcycle is you feel it. You can feel where it is and know where it's going. And if you start this process of cultivating executive presence, most likely the first things you'll see are little things breaking your way. That a parking spot opens up right when you get to a crowded parking lot, things like that, right? Or you manage to arrive at just the right time at their grocery store so there's almost no line. Little stuff, right? But you cultivate that presence, you get in the flow state, in the zone. Then you will create a steady stream of good luck for yourself. That's how you be in the right place at the right time with the right thing. And quite bluntly, your executive presence is your secret weapon. Most people do not naturally have a high level of this. Some do. They're the ones you've heard of. They're the superstars. They're the ones like Steve Jobs or Brad Pitt or LeBron James. Anybody at the top of their game, at the top of their industry or career has this. And so I'll give you a metaphor to understand how this is such an important advantage. This is a tremendous competitive advantage you have for your career, for your company, also your family, your finances too. But we're going to focus mostly on career. And so if we look at professional sports, if we go back in time to the 50s, the 60s, into the 70s, most athletes just played their sport during the season, and they would go to practice, and then go to games, and then they'd party or have a side job or just do whatever. They didn't think a lot about nutrition. They didn't spend a lot of time weightlifting. They didn't spend a lot of time doing mobility training or things like that. Nowadays, the game is totally different, and it doesn't matter what sport. Take your pick. Basketball, hockey, football, baseball, Olympic sports, anything. Every high-level athlete today has to use nutrition, has to have a strength coach, has to have a mobility coach. Many of them also have mindset coaches. Why? They are like secret weapons. And those that innovated this back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s had a huge advantage. And they won more games, they won more championships. And here's the thing. Eventually, the world will catch on. Eventually, the masses will start to understand that cultivating presence is enormously powerful, enormously important for your career, for your relationships, for everything in life. And those that don't cultivate presence will be left in the dust. Kind of like if you were a young athlete growing up today and you never lifted weights, you never paid attention to nutrition, you never did any stretching or mobility work. You might be a star in high school, you might make it in college, maybe you're a fringe player in a high-level league, but you're never going to be a superstar. What I'm looking for is to find people that have all it takes to be superstars, but there's just that one missing piece. So is that you? Are you intelligent? Do you have enough education? Are you driven? Are you ambitious? Are you creative? Do you have a great idea? Do you have a talent or gift? Awesome. Let me ask you, have you experienced your next level success? If you have, awesome. Go watch someone else's video, right? It's YouTube. There's billions of them. But if that's you and you have not found your next level success, if you're making a living but not a killing, pay close attention. I got 7 more videos in this series, and I'm going to explain in some depth how executive presence works and give you the specific insights and teachings and action steps you need to start moving forward in a powerful way. And to finish this off, I'm going to share with you the thing that my late mentor Carl would ask all of his new clients upon first meeting them, including me. He would say, are you ready to add a 0 to your income? So if you are, you're in the right place. Buckle your seatbelt. It's going to be quite a ride. This is the end of video number 1. This is Brett Michael Phillips signing off now. This is it for video number 1 in our series. But I hope to see you again soon for all the rest of them, and maybe at one of my live events or maybe in a personal consultation for a discovery call. Until next time, please take care and namaste.